The San Francisco 49ers just made 3 very interesting moves that I can't wait to tell you about in this video. Plus, I've got some stuff on Dre Greenlaw and some very good news as to what you should be looking for the remaining 3 games of the season. If you're new here, I'm Nate. I make daily 49ers content. Please consider subscribing if that's what you're looking for. And look at that subscribe button. That subscribe button looks primo. It looks perfect right there. So let's start with the good news, folks, that Dre Greenlaw is expected to play. He said it himself on KNBR. No doubt I should be able to go on Sunday against Miami. I think this is fantastic news that tells you exactly what we thought was the case, that Dre Greenlaw was just dealing with some soreness, that it was just soreness, a little tight. Some things were a little tight, some little soreness. You know, the guy hasn't played football and then for 10 months, and then he just goes out there and he's just full on the Dre Greenlaw we've always known and loved. So that's some intense Dre Greenlaw action right there. So it's no surprise that he's a little bit sore after that. That's not the interesting moves that I wanted to tell you about, but it is great news, and I wanted to make sure I got that one out there, of course. He was interviewed on KNBR today, said, "It was like a dream come true, a very special moment. When I heard that roar, it just gave me goosebumps." Can you imagine? It's cool too, guys, because, you know, Dre Greenlaw's been on the sideline the entire season and, you know, even been involved a little bit at times too. He's been fined for it, but you know what I'm talking about. But Dre Greenlaw has been on the sideline and he's just been waiting and watching and waiting. And he's hearing roars, and he's heard the roars from the crowd when big plays happen and the 49ers do things that are special, yada, yada, yada. But that feeling of being on the field, I mean, something that many of us have dreamed about what it would feel like to be on that field, to make that big hit or make that big play and hear the stadium just erupt on your behalf. That's a cool thing, man. I got chills just thinking about it. But anyway, let's get into the moves that the 49ers made today. There are several pretty interesting moves here, okay? Starting with the fact that they waived Ambry Thomas to make room for these guys here. Now, the waiving of Ambry Thomas in itself is interesting as a statement. We'll have to come back to that one in a minute, but that by itself is an interesting move. They pick up a guy named Austin Pleasance, okay? And when I went digging, I went beyond the paywall, and I started trying to figure out, what can I learn about this guy, Austin Pleasance? And you know what the best words to sum this guy up are? You're not going to like this. I'm just being honest with you. Not enough snaps. I had to screenshot it because I was like, this part's not behind a paywall, so I felt comfortable sharing it with you. But you go like through his years, and you're like, okay, how was last year? Ooh, those grades don't look good. How was the year before that? Not enough snaps. How was the year before that? Not enough snaps. How was the year before that? Not enough snaps. How was this year? Not enough snaps. I mean, the guy just has not played a whole lot of football. That's the flat out truth. He's been given many opportunities, but he's just not been he's not yet found a place on a roster outside of, you know, the practice squad for the most part. So not a whole lot that we can actually know about him. What we can know, however, this is another interesting move. Interesting move number 3 is the move for Chandler Wooten, who is, it's not a move. It's not the type of move that completely like jumps off the page at you. But when you start to dig for it, and I gotta pull this up here. Hold up. Oh, geez, I got too many pieces up here. When you start to dig around, you notice a few things. Okay, starting with, he's above average coverage grade this year. Now, this year, limited sample size. Every year so far, only a couple he's been in the league. Small sample size. So, big caveat. I'm aware of that. Don't at me in the comments. But this is interesting because he's basically the opposite of who Devondre Campbell was. I mean, assuming he'll actually play football. You got that joke. Anyway, he's above average coverage grade. He's right now 20th out of 177 linebackers in coverage. He's also above average in his pass rush grade at 43rd out of 177 in pass rushing. He's only pass rushed like 4 times this season, I think. Three times this season. So, again, we're talking about really small sample size on that one. His run defense snaps, he's been out there a total of 59 snaps this season. Okay, that gives you a little bit of a picture of how often he's actually been out there. 59 snaps out of this many games. That's not exactly a large sample. And I'm fully aware of that, but I do think it is fascinating that they've gone for a guy, which I'm sure this is like more coincidental than it is intentional. I'm just, in my head, I'm like, this guy's the opposite of Devondre Campbell, who wasn't really great on any of the metrics, to be fair, but his coverage grade was by far, in terms of the eye test, it was the worst for sure. And you look at the stats, it was not great. He was, actually, I wrote this down because I looked it up. Devondre was 89th out of 177, rated average at best in coverage. And that was an area of weakness we saw early on in the season where we felt like the other teams were getting mismatches, and the mismatches always seemed to be Devondre in coverage. Like, what are you doing? How are we in that situation? That's a bad situation to be in. So anyway, it's an interesting move, I think. Maybe I'm 99% sure it's purely coincidental, but let me know what you think about the moves. They're obviously, they're small moves. They're practice squad moves. They're not, game changer moves. But it is always interesting when you get guys out there, former Auburn Tiger, Chandler Wooten, of course, who had his best season, his final season before entering the draft. So it was a good time to go out there and play good football. But whatever. I'll take these for what it is. I always like moves because I like the 49ers getting eyes on as many players as possible. So I have no problem with the 49ers, moving guys in and out of the practice squad a bunch and just getting an opportunity to see a lot of guys, because you never know when guys get that opportunity with the right organization. I'll tell you, I know this is not what we're talking about today, but I'll tell you, I said this, okay, on a different YouTube channel during the offseason. I said, you're going to see a different Sam Darnold this season. I said that. And I'm only saying it to you because I think it relates to what we're talking about here, that you could take a guy like a Sam Darnold, and if he's in the wrong system with the wrong guys around him, not the right weapons, not the right coach, yada, 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 he's just another quarterback. He's just another guy that you would expect to be a backup. But you put him with KOC over there with some incredible weapons over in Minnesota, and all of a sudden he looks like a star, doesn't he? And I think that it's fair to say system, play calling, whatever you want to call it, wide receiver targets, that all of those things play into how a quarterback is successful, right? I mean, it's part of the game. It's a team sport, right? Like Jerry Rice said. So I think same kind of deal here. You never know who Austin Pleasance might turn into when he gets around the 49ers locker room, gets around this organization. You never know who Chandler Wooten might turn into with this organization. All right, let's move on to the final thing. I thought this was absolutely super, super interesting, so I just wanted to throw it at you and see what you think in the comments below. But with Bosa, Hufanga, and Greenlaw back, the final 3 games, all against competent offenses, should be able to provide a fair gauge of Nick Sorenson's progress learning the ropes at defensive coordinator. It took DeMeco Ryans over half a season in 2021, and no complete fair eval can be finished until the 49ers have a reasonable amount of key defensive pieces back in place. Their performance versus LA was a promising sign. And I love this point from David Lombardi. And I know that, not everything that Lombardi says is popular, and that's fine. I don't care. I don't think he cares either, to be fair. But this is something I will stand behind, because we have watched all season long, wondering all season long what it would be like if we had a healthy Dre Greenlaw, if we had a healthy Hufanga. Even when we got Hufanga back the first time, he wasn't right. He wasn't right yet. And now we're seeing the impact that these guys have on the defense when they are right. And you're talking about your number one safety and arguably your number one linebacker. I mean, like one of your top 2 guys, right? I guess he's in the conversation in terms of most valuable asset to the defense. It's really hard to argue between Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, because for a lot of different reasons. I won't bother going into that argument because it's supposed to be a short point. But I think big picture, right? Like these are big name dudes who have a big impact on your defense. And they're tone setters and attitude and speed and violence, all those things that Niners are about. And then you are trying to evaluate Nick Sorenson without those guys. That is kind of tricky. What I will say as a slight caveat here is, DeMeco Ryans didn't always have all his guys healthy. Neither did Robert Saleh. I mean, this is part of the game. Guys get injured, and you have to find ways to be creative and be effective without it. And clearly, Nick Sorensen has chosen, or the organization has chosen, Kyle has chosen through over Nick Sorensen's head that he's not going to answer a lack of depth at certain positions with creativity. Clearly, maybe that would really be offensive to them. But in my opinion, when you see guys go down, in my mind, I think, hey, we got to start giving them different looks. Make that offense think differently about what they're seeing. Because if you don't start giving them different looks, then they're just going to look at your vanilla defense and be like, well, we'll tack that guy with the long hair who likes to give up because he's terrible in coverage. And they did that over and over, and it just seemed like too easy. You got to go out there, and in my mind, you have to, and I know this is probably way simpler than it actually is in real life, but in my mind, it's as simple as when you have guys go down and you don't have the right depth in the position there, maybe they thought they did, then you need to do something different. You need to make some changes, just tweak some things, show offenses some different looks, throw them off, confuse them a little bit, because if you don't do that extra stuff, you're going to get exposed, which I think the 49ers have much this season. There's no excuses now, though. And I agree with Lombardi on this one, and I'm stoked about this because I'm really hoping these guys all stay healthy for the rest of the season because I want to know. I would love to see against these three offenses. I mean, we saw what the Lions did just the other day. Now, they lost David Montgomery, and they've had a lot of injuries, so, we'll have to wait and see, how that impacts them, I suppose, this weekend. But, this weekend. Anyway, I'm like losing track of what day it is. As far as I'm concerned, I think this is a great opportunity for us to actually evaluate how good Nick Sorensen is when he's got all of his guys back, because it only seems fair that the guy at least have a few games against some mostly difficult offenses that he should have to scheme against to figure some things out. It'll be interesting to see what happens. We'll also have that before and after with the Cardinals game because we'll have seen how the 49ers blew it. I was at the game, 100+ degree weather or whatever it was. It was the hottest game, in Santa Clara or whatever. It was, oh man, that was brutal. But I remember being there and just feeling like we did not have an answer for Kyler Murray when he ran the ball that first drive. It just like, boom. Oh, okay. It's going to be easy for Kyler today, isn't it? And it'll be interesting to see how those adjustments have been made too from Sorensen and company with now having guys back from injury. So that'll be exciting to see as well. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. As always, appreciate it. Hope you guys have a fantastic Tuesday.